If you've ever walked through downtown Ann Arbor or the North Campus area, you may have seen the lunchroom or Detroit Street Filling Station or the Lunchroom Bakery and Cafe. You may have stopped in for some healthy vegan food or live music. But what you might not know, what goes on behind the scenes, is that the majority of people who are cooking and serving your food are in recovery from drug and alcohol addictions. Our business supports and nurtures these individuals. We provide a framework for them to piece their lives back together and to give back to those around them. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about our recovery workplace and tell you the stories of some of our amazing staff members. Our mission-based business practices are related to the fact that I came to the restaurant world by a very unusual path. I was not a business major. I was not a chef or a culinary student. In fact, I had very little prior restaurant experience. My background is being a community organizer and activist. Starting in the 1980s when I was a U of M student, and for the next 3 decades, I advocated for peace and civil rights and civil liberties, for prison reform, for workers' rights, and more. My own rap sheet includes 3 arrests for civil disobedience. The common thread running through my endeavors has been community building and organizational development. It is those skills that I brought with me into the restaurant world and into the recovery business world. My foray into food began in 2010. I was burned out from working, decided to take a break, and my only agenda was to be open to opportunities that came my way. I bicycled across the state with a group of musicians, took a wilderness canoe trip, and managed a friend's successful city council campaign. Those were great days. Then, and they still are, and I started cooking vegan food with my friend who became my business partner. We threw dinner parties for our friends. We held pop-up meals at various locations, and then in 2011, we opened a food cart. After 2 successful seasons as a food cart, we, in 2013, opened our first brick and mortar restaurant, the Lunchroom. Over the next 4 years, we opened 2 more brick and mortar locations. My business's foray into the world of recovery began in 2014. It started with one young man who came in to apply for a dishwashing job. He stated in his interview that he was a recovering alcoholic and had entered treatment. He was living in a transitional house, which is a sober living residence run by Dawn Farms Addiction Treatment Agency. He had flunked out of school and had worn out the patience of his friends and family. At the moment, while I admired his honesty, I did not know the significance of those statements for him personally or what they were going to mean for my business. I watched that young man stay sober and help others stay sober. He got back into school, completed his undergraduate degree, and is at this very moment a successful student at U of M Law School. Yeah. That individual brought us more employees from the recovery community, and pretty quickly we became known as a recovery-friendly workplace. To date, we've had more than 125 people in recovery work for us. Over the years, we have honed our practices and policies to provide the best possible support for our employees in recovery. We schedule them in a way that allows them to go to meetings and to fulfill service commitments. We give them permission to step outside and call their sponsors. We have senior staff members in recovery who can help those who may be struggling. We hold them to the same high workplace standards that we hold all of our employees. And to underscore our commitment to their health and well-being, we offer full health and dental benefits to all of our full-time employees. Several of our staff members have volunteered to share their stories with you tonight. The first person is Mitch. Mitch has 2 years of sobriety and is a kitchen manager, and he is kind of a miracle. Mitch began abusing substances at age 11. At age 14, he was using IV heroin. He has done time in jail and prison. Mitch has overdosed 24 times and twice has been in a coma. Right, he's a miracle. At age 28, he finally got his addiction under control, and today he has a serious meditation practice. He's a leader in the local Buddhist-centered recovery movement, and he is an amazing human being. He is a patient, gentle, and effective leader. You may wonder why we do this. What's in it for us to invest in human beings who need a chance and to be a recovery workplace? The answer is that community building is our mission. It is our business plan. Of course, a healthy business needs a viable bottom line. Without that, the business would fail and none of this would matter. But we find that building community does drive our bottom line. Our employees respond to the trust and care that we put into them by giving their best to the business. All of this leads to a wonderful restaurant ambiance and delicious food, which keeps our customers coming back. The intention is to support people in recovery. The result is a healthy business. The next person I'm going to talk to you about is Crystal. Crystal now has 10 months sober, and she is a server. She previously had 12 years of sobriety, but relapsed after the breakup of her marriage. During the time that she was using, she lost her job, she lost her home, and her family. Today, Crystal has repaired those relationships, and she relishes in the fact that her children and grandchildren now call her because they want to spend time with her. Many of our employees deal with complicating and stigmatizing factors, including mental illness, incarceration, homelessness. The tie-in with mental illness comes from the fact that people with depression or other disorders may self-medicate with drugs or alcohol and thereby develop addictions. When they try to stop using, the feelings that they have been suppressing come rushing back and can be overwhelming. The link with incarceration is that people get arrested for drunk driving or possession, and that addicts may do anything to attain their next fix, including committing crimes. Many of our employees have done time behind bars, ranging from months to years to decades. Their criminal records make it difficult for them to obtain housing and employment or get access to education or credit. Some of our employees deal with traumatizing histories of homelessness, violence, or having had to give up their children. Each of these conditions carries tremendous pain and stigma. It's very difficult to succeed without a support network that is equal parts love and accountability. In our workplace, people can be honest about who they are. There is nothing to hide. They are not shunned for their past actions. Rather, they are celebrated for taking the courageous steps necessary to turn their lives around. Ian is a cook who just got 6 months sober. Ian was addicted from an early age and has had periods of time panhandling on the streets. He has found work in kitchens where his addiction only deepened. He credits his sobriety today with the support that he receives from his coworkers in the kitchen who are also sober and in recovery. I spoke with Ian 3 days ago on his 6-month sober anniversary, and he told me that he never knew that life could be like this. Even with all the support we provide, we can't pretend that relapse doesn't happen. When an employee relapses, they cannot stay at work for their own safety and for the sake of others. However, we do have a return to work plan. The employee first has to be honest about their situation. They have to determine the reasons for their relapse. And then They develop a relapse prevention plan and track their recovery goals. Their progress determines when they will be allowed back to work. Several of our employees have returned to work following this process. Some have done it 2 or 3 times, demonstrating that the path to recovery is not necessarily linear. David, pictured here, is a manager with 3 years of sobriety. He is one of our senior people in recovery to whom others turn to for support. David has an incredible story of his own. His addiction led to periods of living in abandoned houses and in his car, and ultimately to a year in jail. Upon release, after going through treatment, he came to work for us, and David is the only individual to have worked every position in every one of our locations. And we are going to return to David a little bit later in this talk. There is much to celebrate in our recovery workplace. We celebrate a lot, and those of you who follow us on social media may have seen some of that. We celebrate when somebody gets 6 months sober, 9 or 12 months sober, 1 or 2 or 3 years sober. We celebrate when they get off probation or when they get their driver's license back. We celebrate when they buy a car or when they sign a lease to their own apartment or get back into school. We celebrate when they repair damaged relationships or even get their children back. Dylan is a cook at our bakery and cafe location. Dylan describes his journey of going from being depressed and addicted and unable to accomplish anything to where he is now, where he has unlimited energy. Dylan is known to single-handedly handle an extremely busy lunch rush. Where he used to be the worry of his family, and now they call on him for support and advice. So many of us, especially in the university community, take for granted a normal and productive life. For addicts and alcoholics, that can be extremely difficult to attain. At our restaurants, we see people move mountains time and again. After society has given up on them, and they have all but given up on themselves, they embrace recovery, and one step at a time, they become productive, reliable, and happy people. They find their place and purpose, and they continue their personal growth. Mike is a manager. He comes from an IT background. When others in the recovery community suggested that he come to work for Detroit Street, he made a hard detour in his career path and came to work for our restaurant. And today he stays because of the honesty and support that he finds in our recovery workplace. Brandon is a recent U of M grad. When alcoholism threatened to derail his education, he found support in the university's collegiate recovery program. Today, he finds support in his family of coworkers. Cameron, who does just about anything that's asked of him in the business, is a server at 2 locations and a bartender, and he helps with graphic design. He is also a very talented muralist. Cameron painted this mural in the bathroom at Detroit Street Filling Station. You should go see it if you haven't. If you're not a woman, I can take you in and show you. And he has more murals to come. Here are some snapshots of some of our other employees in recovery. Mike, on the left, has 14 months of sobriety and is a father to 2 young daughters. Anthony, on the right, has a year and a half of sobriety under his belt. He likes to wear his apron backwards as a cape and call himself Prep Man. Bruce has 5 months sober. He creates some of those incredibly delicious dinner specials you may have tried, and he moonlights as a stand-up comic. Eric is a kitchen manager at the lunchroom. You might have recognized him. He's a friendly guy who talks to just about everybody who comes in. His side gig is coaching hockey to young kids. John is a dishwasher at 2 locations. He's in grad school for hospital administration, and he and his wife are raising a beautiful baby boy. Kimber has 3 years of sobriety. She's a manager at the lunchroom, and she also runs a transitional house for women in recovery. Trisha, 6 months sober, is a server. She is beloved by our guests and her coworkers alike. Zach has 14 months of sobriety. He is a cook. He is an absolute beast in the kitchen. He has a love for all things food and country music. And then there's Megan, pictured in the front row. Megan is a key player within our organization. She is a manager at 2 of our locations. She has 3+ years of sobriety and parents a 12-year-old daughter and is a full-time student. Megan has more stamina than anybody I know. She can crush a busy lunch rush at the lunchroom and then come over and do it all over again for dinner at Detroit Street Filling Station. So this is David, who we saw a few slides back. He is pictured here. He recently gave the honors convocation speech at Washtenaw Community College, where he is a 4.0 student. And David was recently admitted to the University of Michigan, where he will transfer in the fall. He is going to study linguistics with an eye towards law school. And here is some very happy news. David and Megan, who met here in our recovery workplace, are now engaged. I cannot tell you how much I have learned and grown from my years in our recovery workplace. Everything that I give, I get back tenfold in love and joy. It is an honor to participate in people's journeys to piece their lives back together. Now that I look back at where I was trying to change the world to where I am now, operating in a much smaller sphere with an emphasis on individuals, there are certain things that run through all of it. Regardless of what you're doing, operate with compassion, defy stigma, build community, and take care of each other. Create spaces that are safe, healing, empowering, and transforming. Just like our restaurants, you can't always see from the outside what is going on the inside. You can bet that within even the roughest characters, there is a gem, and in the right conditions, that gem will shine. Thank you.